guys ready?
Yes.
All right, give me 10 more minutes and we'll get going. No, I'll turn my mic on here. And we'll get going. We good? Yeah. All right. Hi, I'm Brian Smith. Welcome. Thanks for coming. This will be fun. Sounds different up here now too. So we're going to do the red drip. You can do it for lots of different things. I brought a bunch of pens over here. So it kind of goes beyond the whiskey barrel pens, and you can do it for sports pens too. So we've got like my high school colors here with basketball court wood, and I did it on a steampunk with a diamond cast blank. So if you want to come up and look at these, feel free. It's not going to bother me if you're up and down. Just watch where you walk or whatever. But there's those. We can pass them around later too if you want. We're going to do the PSI Raw Kit. PSI Raw Kit. So this is one that I've done some extra special drips. We've got the double layered drip there, and then a second drip on the side with the label cast on it. Offset drilling, so you can see the char underneath it. So if you want to pass that around, you guys can take a look at that.
This camera's watching.
Okay. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of editing today, I'm sure, so that's all right. That's kind of the story of my life. All right, we'll get started. I am not going to turn the barrel blank, but I figure everybody's got a basic understanding of how to turn barrel blanks. So the process really starts with the glue up and the drilling process. If you're going to drill off center, I got one of those. Where'd that go? You can get pretty close to the edge. I'm a couple millimeters. I don't know how Hardin does his, but I generally just eyeball it with where the drill bit is. But you can take your bushing and kind of line it up on the end of the pen blank and just get an idea of where that's going to be so that you've got a little bit of bushing hanging over the edge. So you're going to get a flat spot after you're done turning based on how close you are. Different whiskey barrel blanks have different thicknesses of char, and that really, you got to kind of understand your blanks and what you're dealing with so you know where to drill. If you're doing like Jim Beam, you can't drill as close to the edge. Their char is really, really thick, and you're going to get into the brittle wood, and it's going to flake off, and you're going to have a blowout. Now, where did I put?
Do you hit that with thin CA?
I don't. No. On a lot of these, I just use friction polish. You can do CA, but later on in the process, I'll talk about that. You've just got to account for it, and that's a big part of it, is making sure that you get this tube right here turned to the exact diameter, or actually slightly under. If you're doing CA, you've just got to add more onto it. So this one is just friction polish on the outside of it. So the good part about offset drilling is if you screw up and you blow the blank out, you've got plenty of room on a whiskey barrel blank to go back and re-drill it. So this blank is good to go here. I can still use it, and this will be a pen. You'll never know the difference when it's done. It just won't have that like black stripe down it. All right, so I'm skipping that. Is everybody cool with me not turning one of these? The glue up process is where it all kind of begins. I hate squaring up oak. You got to do it on your disc sander to do it well. If you're a pen mill person, you can do it, but on oak, it just likes to jump and bounce if your blade is not super sharp. So with this, you only have to square up one end. So can we see this all right on that camera? Is that looking good all right there? Is this better over here?
No.
Well, not for them, but...
For you guys. All right. So I'll do it both ways. All right, so when I glue this in, I'm leaving like 5 millimeters or so over the end and not gluing the tube in all the way. I'll square up the other end, but not this end. So when I go to turn this, I will trim this right down, and you'll see that on the blank that's coming around. I'll trim it right down, and I'll just slightly round this edge over. Now, the measurement of how much tube you leave over the end, I honestly rarely measure it. I just kind of eyeball it. but then later on, I set my blank up to match whatever I've done on this blank. All right, you with me so far? All right, so that's where the magic starts to happen. Now, if you're gonna do this a lot, I recommend turning a dummy blank. So I've got a maple blank that's set up the exact same way, and generally, I'll keep these pretty close. This one's a little bit longer than what this is. I'd probably, when I turn this down, I'd trim a little bit more of the wood off of here. But I use this dummy blank for everything. I've done it where I've turned the actual whiskey barrel blank and then done the next step, but if you touch your tool to this on your finished barrel blank, you've got a nice ring, and then you're not up a creek, but you've got some fixing work to have to do. All right, so have I confused anybody already? Excellent, that was my goal. All right, so that is step one. Step two is to cut an Alumilite blank. So these are not wax. I get that question all the time. Do you dip them? Nope. I want it to be a durable pen. I don't want somebody to have this in their pocket and knock wax off. So it's designed to look like a red wax drip or a white wax or purple wax, whatever sports team color you're going for. The reason I chose the Penn State Raw kit for this was because at 10 o'clock at night when I came up with this idea, that was all I had. And this was one of those things where I just had to get the idea out of my head and wanted to make sure that I got it done. I can't find my little bars here. I may just talk my way through this and not drill this because it takes a bit of time. So the Penn State Raw kit, it's a 3/8 inch tube, and the outside diameter is a 1/2 inch, which makes this perfect. Very easy to measure. I've got my calipers set to a 1/2 inch here. I would turn them on and measure stuff as I go, but I vacuumed up the battery and the battery cover on Sunday, and I didn't have time to go get a new one, so this was locked in. But either way, the bushings for this, they're a 1/2 inch. It's perfect. It works really well. So your barrel tube, you got to be at a 1/2 inch or slightly under. I'll go to like 0.495 or 0.490 just to allow for a little bit of room for finish. Just a little bit off, and it makes things difficult. So we're going to drill this at a 1/2 inch. I mark my drill bit here. For the red part, you don't want to drill all the way in with your 1/2 inch. You're going to go. You're going to leave a pretty fair amount, at least a centimeter or so at the end. I'm not trying to be exact yet. I have waste on the end. I know pen people, we want to trim everything to within 2 millimeters, just square that little bit up. If you want to do that, that's awesome with this, but I'm not going to do it. I'd rather leave more of this size drill bit than go too deep. If you go too deep, you're messed up, all right? And again, that'll make sense in just a little bit. So I'm going to drill this. I've marked it here. I've sized it up. This depth here that I leave, it's got to be longer than what you trimmed off here. So if I trim off 7 millimeters, make sure you leave at least 7 millimeters or more of undrilled red stuff. All right? If you've ever done pilot holes, you start with a small drill bit first, right? We're going to do that backwards. We're going to drill the 1/2 inch first. And that way, we're going to come back later on with the 3/8 inch. All right, so we've got 2 holes in there. Now, why do I do it that way? I didn't have a lathe-mounted drilling vise until last week. I've always done this on my drill press. This thing really makes it a lot easier, and you're going to be a lot more accurate. You can get away without it if you've just got a drill press, fine. But I had to do the big drill bit first, that way I could find the exact center. So if you're not perfect, this won't seat well. And where did I put that one? Right here. So this is one, and I'll pass this around. This is a bad drill. If you're not centered up, this isn't going to seat. What you want it to do is when you get this drilled, 1/2 inch first, 3/4 or 3/8 inch after that, this should go in, and your brass tube should come about up to the end. This one, it doesn't do that, so I'll pass around a good one. This one should work. And you can see right there where it'll come up right to the end, all right? So it should be just like that. Does that make sense so far? All right, so that's really one of the big tricks to this, is getting the drilling done right. All right, you'll pass that around, and you can see this is the bad drill, okay? So I'm gonna pass that one around, so.
That's both of them?
Let me make sure I keep one that I can actually use. This one, I think that one will work too. Yeah, you can pass that around too. Okay. So is everybody cool with me not drilling this? Trying to save time. I don't know if you were in here earlier when I told Jason that I would do this. It was taking me about 3 hours to make one of these, and I told him I could do it in an hour. I was like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. So I'm gonna change this over. Who in here is a mandrel turner? Do you guys use mandrels? Who's turning between centers? Okay. I have been a mandrel turner since I started, and I have never switched over to between centers. So you could probably do this between centers, but it's not how I do it. So we'll get our mandrel on here, and we'll go from there. All right. Once I get it drilled, I will lightly square it, but I am not going to square it up to the brass tube, especially if you're using a dummy. You're going to leave your blank a little bit long. So this sounds a little weird to not do that, but
When you say squared up, you're talking parting a little bit of it off.
Right. So I use a disc sander to square everything up. I have a second lathe where I've got my disc sander mounted on, and eventually, this red drip is going to be the end of your pen. So you're going to need it squared up eventually, but because of how I do this, I can't do it right away. So with your bushings, you need this is the one I think I was going to use. With your bushings, you need pressure on the end of the blank. When I first started doing this, I would take the red Alumilite blank and I would put a little drop of glue right here to hold it in place while I turn it. I stopped doing that. It was an unnecessary step. Not only that, but a lot of times if you got too much glue on there, it started running up the blank and you started losing a lot of material. You lost a lot of length on the red drip part. So this is not squared up to the tube completely. I've got like about 1 millimeter of extra red on there, all right? So that is gonna leave enough material that when I put my bushings on here, I've got pressure to keep that red blank against my dummy right here, all right? And that is really what makes this possible, is being able to take the blank off. So I haven't used any CA glue on the red at all yet. And not gluing the blank, even with just a little drop on the end, has saved me a lot of time, because then you're parting it off, parting it off, parting it off. So that's what makes it possible. If you want to just use your barrel blank, you can turn this on the barrel, and as long as you don't touch your chisel to it, you can take this off at any time to do the rest of the work on this. So one of the things I like to do in pen making is just try stuff that nobody else has done. I'm always looking to try to make something different. If you saw a lot of my pens up there, I don't always follow the rules of make it straight and flat. It might not be perfectly sized to the bushings. And I think that's okay if you're getting into some of the artistic stuff and things that are a little bit different. All right, so here we go, using a lathe for the first time that I've never used before. No pressure here. So So if you're sitting in front of me, you're in the danger zone, but whatever, no, it's fine. All right, so at this point, once you've got that on there, you are ready to do a little bit of turning. So we're gonna kind of create the outside profile of the drip, right? So bigger at the bottom, kind of scooping in for the long part of the drip, and then kind of going back out and rounding over to the bushings. I'll take it pretty close to the bushings at this point, just knowing that later on I'm going to touch that end up and probably have to come back in and resize it a little bit. All right? Okay, so let's see how we do here. A little bit closer. All right. One of the most important parts of this step is just making sure that you take the outside of the blank off on the entire surface. So I will basically, center it up here. I will center it up here. It's funny, this lathe sounds different from mine. It's quieter, so I'm like, ooh, that doesn't sound like it's going fast enough.
It never goes fast enough.
So we're pretty good there. I don't have to worry about this end. I just hack these things through on my, my jigsaw, and so my ends aren't square, and that's why I do have to square up this end to get started. So once I've made sure that I am perfectly round, I'm pretty close here. I'll give it another pass here. Making sure that, I take that outside shiny edge off. All right, that's good. I don't want to take too much off of the bottom end of the drip because I just like that to be fat and big. I've kind of, I don't know, sometimes I do really skinny drips, sometimes they're really, really big and wide. So now we're going to go on this end here, and we're just going to round this off. And this is where, if you're using the actual barrel blank to do this part, you just got to make sure that you don't catch the corner of your tool on that and, put a big ring around it. All right, so that's pretty good. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just basically taking material off to save you time later. So now we're going to go in here to the middle, and we're going to thin this out. And I'm going to start kind of creating that profile for the drip. Don't take too much off now because you can't put it back on. That is really hard to do. So if you want to leave it a little bit thicker, we can always thin it out later, right? When you're doing this part, right up here, remember you've got that, I call it the shoulder area, where you've got the 3/8 inch hole and then the 1/2 inch hole. You want to make sure that you don't go too thin and trim too deep there. So we're going to leave that just a little bit thicker. I'm going to take a little bit more off. I do find that when I do this, if it is slipping, it'll slip with when I go left to right a little bit more than it will if I go right to left. So if you're having trouble with that, go the other direction, and that should help it out. All right, so I'm going to take this up to about the bushings, and I've got about 7 millimeters or so, I guess, of room from where that dummy blank ends at the 3/8 inch tube and the 1/2 inch where I turned that down to. We're going to go in from this angle here. So I like to just kind of round this over this way, just a little bit, and just kind of taper this in. You will get some vibrations. You've got a blank that it's not glued on there, so it's going to happen, but that's fine. We'll clean that up later. All right, we're getting there. Just a little bit more. It's, I'm always tempted to spend a lot of time on the end here, but knowing that I'm going to go back later on and re-square that end and take it right up to the take it right up to the brass tube on the barrel part. I try not to spend too much time there. So, all right, that's pretty decent. I'm happy with that. We'll take a little bit more out of the middle. All right, that's good. Any questions so far? We're good? All right, have I bored you yet? I told everybody, I was like, you're either gonna really love this and be like, oh, that's pretty cool, or you're like, oh, wow, that was way simpler than what I thought it was. So, all right, we'll set our bushings over there. So there's the piece that we just turned. And so that'll fit on your barrel blank, that'll fit over the dummy blank, and you're good to go. All right, the next step, I think I'll kind of hold this up. The next step is to start shaping out the actual drip part, getting rid of all the material that we don't need. So what I like to do is I like to take a Sharpie marker and I will just kind of draw the outline of what I think the drip should look like. Go big on it, don't go too thin. Again, if you take too much off, you can't put it back on. So we'll look just about like this, all right? Nothing fancy, just remembering that you've got the 3/8 inch hole here, and that 1/2 inch stops at some point. You never want to take material off all the way up to the 3/8 inch hole. All right, so you ready to see that? That is where my belt sander comes into play to do this quickly. When I first did this, I did this all with a Dremel tool, and it took forever. So I think this is just a Harbor Freight, and they're like, what, 40, 50 bucks, something like that, is that right? It's been a few years. They're not terribly expensive, and this is kind of my workhorse for when I want to knock the corners off. I don't normally knock the corners off a blank before turning it, but I will if it's a whiskey barrel blank, because it's off center. There's just a lot of material to remove, and when that blank is flopping around off center, it's really easy to have tool catches and slips. So I'll knock the corners off of these, and I use it for this. So we're going to get rid of all that negative space material that I don't need on this as much as I can. We're going to get as close as we can, because that's going to save us a lot of time later on. So the nice part about this machine is that is way loud compared to the lathe. Whether you're working on the right side or the left side, you can adjust this belt to move one side or the other. I hold this in my hand. I find it's the best way for me to have really good control over it. So just try not to remove the end of your fingers. That doesn't feel good at all. All right, so we're going to take this down here. This is where we make a big mess in this place. So, all right, so just kind of took the back half of it off, and after that we'll start shaping it out a little bit. Come up to the top and round this out. And then we're going to go back down the other side and remove some of that. And if I need to go back and reshape anything, we'll do that. I'll take a little bit more off of here. This was a really good spot to stop and just kind of check your blank out. We want overhang, and that's what really makes this possible and makes it look really good, is making sure that you leave some of that overhang on the top part of it. You don't want to take it all the way up to the 3/8 inch. I'm not trying to segment a ring on. Have you ever guys done that where you had a blank, you screwed it up, chopped it off, and then popped a ring on it and finished it up like that? That's kind of where this started, was doing some things like that, but part of how I got the idea for it. but we want to leave that overhang, so don't take too much off here. But just remember, when something drips, it doesn't drip in a straight line across the back. It's got curves to it. So I'm going to just kind of scoop this in back here. I meant to bring some little Maker's Mark bottles to, show the drips, but in packing up, I totally walked off without those. So
we're just going to take a little bit more off here.
Good. That leaves a pretty fair amount on this overhang part. All right, so that's that. Any questions so far? We good? All right. Just always go back, check it with your dummy blank, and make sure that you like the way it looks throughout the process. So I don't know, that looked pretty decent. There's that. I see it all right. Okay, I think I'm going to hold on to this one, and I'm just going to keep working on it. If you want to do different shapes, you can leave other little smaller drips like that. I started a double drip on this one, kind of a layered look. That takes a little bit more time and patience doing that. But all right, so next we're going to go to our Dremel tool here, and we're going to shape the rest of this out. My barrel blanks, I get those from Tim McKenzie. They are super long. So I can do 2 Penn State raw kits with one of his blanks and have plenty of wood to work with. They are by far the longest blanks for whiskey barrels that I have ever purchased. And the certificates that come with them too are pretty cool. And that's always a huge selling feature, is having that certificate that goes with the pens. I guess this drip is one of those things I kind of call value added. I started selling whiskey barrel pens about 10 years ago, I guess, and I sold a ton of them. Everybody loved the Maker's Mark, and then all of a sudden it was just, people weren't buying them anymore. So I wanted a way to just add a little bit more to it, and once I started doing the drips, these pens sell really, really well. All right, so again, Harbor Freight, nothing fancy, nothing expensive here. The bit that I use for this, I was using just a lot of the grinders that came with my tool when I first bought it, but I found these from Chad at Turner's Warehouse. It is the Bull Monster Ball Nose Double Cut Carbide Burr. Does anybody want to write that down? I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to print some notes off, and if you want them on email or whatever, I'll post them up on the group webpage or Facebook page. They'll be there. So there it is. Works pretty well. All right. So your dummy blank or your barrel blank comes in handy here. What I like to do is I flip it upside down, and that makes it just a nice little holder for it. So I'm going to kind of just hold it like this with my finger on the back side of it. I've got a lot of room to work with here with my thumb, and we'll go from there. All right. I run this at like 3 speed. I'm left-handed, so the bit is rotating away from me on the underneath side. So if I do have a little bit of a catch, I'm staying firm with this hand, and this thing is just going to launch right out there. It happens. I've never broke one when it happens, but just so you know, if you're in the first couple seats here, it's coming your way. All right, so we are going to start by kind of trying to go in here. If I like the shape that I've got, we'll take it right up to the line. If not, this is where we're going to create our final shape with rough edges. Just go easy at this. You don't want the tool to bounce. If it bounces, you're going to have tool marks later on, and that just is more cleanup work in the end. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can do this. I keep one hand against me. It's just kind of how I brace things. And I just kind of start working the material down. The trickiest parts of this, to make it look right, are your corners here. So as you start rounding this out, these corners just, seem to appear out of nowhere. And anybody that I've talked to that has tried to do this part They talk a lot about how they have trouble on these corners, on the bottom edge of the drip. Hopefully you guys can see this all right. I'll turn this way a little bit more for you. I think one of the secrets to making this look good is I spend time on the front, the side, but I also will spend a little bit of time on the back here. And that's how you get rid of these little parts that kind of flare out to the side. So we're going to take those down, but we're really doing it more from the underneath as opposed to any place else. So obviously, I think you kind of get the idea now of why we have to drill it out first. That gives us the inside arc for the ½ inch as well as, fitting it to the tube. The first one of these I did, it took me 8 hours to do because I got all excited about it. I was like, oh man, it looks good, but a couple coats of CA on the outside of this would look great and just really give it that extra shine. I was sloppy and I got it on the inside of this arc right here, and the minute that I got CA on the back, man, I had ruined it. So I spent the next like 4 hours sanding and filing and scraping it out of there, and that was awful. I'm surprised I actually made more after that one. All right, so we're gonna go over to the other side here. So the closer you get with your belt sanding here, the less material there is to take off. I kind of work around the blank, doing just kind of a general pass around the first time, rounding it out, taking it into the final shape, and then I will come back later on and smooth it over the top. You don't want this to follow the natural curve of when you rounded it out on the lathe. You gotta take that curve that was like this and tighten it up a little bit on the edges to make it look like it's on the outside and not just kind of, poured over the top. You're looking for a drip that's going this way down the pen and not poured over the top. So that's why we do spend a lot of time on the edges as well as on that back edge. So if you don't like that shape of your Sharpie marker that you drew on there, it comes right off in this step, just going lightly over the top of it, or you can take it off later on when we do the finish work. We're doing all right on time. I have no idea how long this is going to take me, so my goal is to be done in an hour, but if I stop and talk or tell really bad jokes, which I'm trying my best to avoid. All right, so we're starting to get there. Starting to look more and more like the drip. This is gonna be a pretty short one. Longer ones are a lot of fun. They look great, but the first time you do it, go shorter, go wider, and then just kind of learn from there. All right, so we're gonna hit the top edge here. I think the end is by far the most difficult part to make it look right. You don't want to have any sorts of points. Anything pointy or square it's just not going to look natural. So just take a little bit more off. All right. So once I've got the basic shape that I like, I'll just kind of go back over it real lightly. Again, making sure there's nothing chunky. And then I will go around the whole perimeter here and just kind of round that over as well. Now, there's no set order that you have to do this in, but I do wait to thin this center part out till the end. If you get it really thin, it's going to start flexing on you, and that's not a lot of fun to have to work with. All right. I think for time's sake, we'll call this a day, and we're going to go back here and just a few little passes just to make sure that we're kind of dipping in there. You know, when something is dipped in wax, that wax is pretty hot, and it likes to flow and run all down to the tip where it kind of gathers up here as it cools on like the glass bottle. All right. Sometimes I will get kind of crazy and like thin these other parts out. If you look at a bottle that's been dipped in wax, it also kind of has a little ring around that bottom edge, even on the back part, where it just kind of wants to flow down and gather just right around in there. I've tried to do that, but in the end, it makes it really difficult to finish. So, all right. So I'm going to leave that there just like that for now. I think that's good enough. As far as finishing goes from there, I moved everything around up here. I've done this so many different ways, just trying to figure out what's my preferred method. I've used the sanding rolls, the little strips that you tear off, and that works fine. I'm a big fan of Ambernet sheets. See if I can get one out here. I don't normally like to do anything below 400 grit. When you start getting into 200, 220, whatever, or 320, you're going to put a lot of scratches in this, and it is a pain to get those out. So just like a pen, where's most of your time spent? Turning it or the finishing part? Right. So that's what we've got here. Same situation, a lot of time spent finishing it. So I take my Ambernet, wrap it around my finger, and a couple main areas of concern. These edges right here where it really scoops in, we want to get that really well, and then we want to really focus on the tip up here. I'm not real worried about the overhang and the part that's going to go up to the end of your pen, because I can always clean that up later on. We doing all right on time? How are we doing? Start? 9:30. All right. We'll get there, I think. Okay, so wrapped around my finger, just going back and forth here. And again, any rough edges, you want to get rid of those right now. So you've got to remember, there's parts of this that when we put this back on the lathe, it's going to be impossible to get sandpaper against it because it's rounded underneath, right? It's on the downside. It's I guess I would say a vertical edge, right? Instead of a horizontal edge that you can hit with a sandpaper. So just rounding that out a little bit more, cleaning it up, and then I will go around the tip. Again, anything that looks pointy, get rid of it. I have a lot of fun when I'm using the Dremel. That's where you really start to have the drip take shape. But you can start kind of planning for that when you're on your belt sander. I've done drips that kind of curved over to the side a little bit more. Some I make them, just kind of perfect drip shapes, I guess, for lack of better words. Other times they're off center and lopsided. It's just whatever you want to do with it. I've got a pen over here where it took a lot of planning ahead, and I did 2 layered drips. I'll pass that around. That was a lot of fun. Alternating colors, and that pen is basically done the same way, but when you get to your Dremel tool, you've just got to create some flat spots so that the next drip can go over the top of it. I don't know if I'd ever do that one again. That was way more work than I wanted it to be. All right, so we're going to sand this out here. Also making sure that you get the overhang part here. And I left, I don't know, I've probably got about a little bit over a centimeter maybe of overhang before I get into that 3/8 inch hole. Excuse me. And once your edges are done, come back across so that you're getting rid of as many tool marks as you can. So All right, I don't know if we'll get this one all the way to the finish point, just because I don't want to run way over, but what I want to do is just show you some of my little tricks that I do to help me get through the finishing process. And that takes a little bit of time too, so. All right. 400 grit's not bad. You could, if you went down, you know, you're gonna take material off at a faster rate, but anytime you go to something that's a little more coarse, you're putting more scratches in, you know, and more scratches you put in, the more you gotta take out, so. Got one little low area. If you, when you've got your Dremel tool, if you have any of those little bounces, you're gonna put tool marks in it. There's no way around it. The minute it starts bouncing, I'm like, oh, that's more sanding later. So.
You Dremel tool in a stand and you...
I've never done that. I like the freedom of being able to move the tool as well as rotate the blank pretty frequently. You know, you've got a lot of different surface angles and areas there, so you're never really in one spot too long. I'm a lefty, but when I use scissors, they're in my right hand. You know, it's kind of a two-handed process. You can try it. It might work. You know, if you've done a lot of Dremel work and you're okay with that, yeah, give it a try. I'm just used to doing it in both hands here. It's a little nerve-wracking at first putting that thing, you know, that close to my fingers, but pain is temporary, right? I think. I don't know. I've never nicked myself with it, but like I said, I got lucky. That's probably one of the first times that this has never gone flying off someplace, but with the way that the tool rotates in my left hand, it does sometimes want to grab it and pull it out. So sometimes I don't use the blank to hold it. I'll hold it like this, or just, you know, pinch it between my fingers. So, all right, this is pretty decent here for show purposes. I made all these other little parts up here so I could just switch between them, and the problem was when I was doing it, I just kept doing the next step, and forgetting to stop, and I was like, oh, so, all right, that's good enough, I think. I do have a few tool marks on here, and I'll show you what I do with those. Getting rid of the tool marks, it is a big pain. So I'm gonna put it back on the lathe, and throw my spacer bushing on there. I always use a spacer bushing, even if I don't need it for the mandrel length, just to give me more room to work with my tools here. All right, so here's where it gets kind of fun. In these, I just grabbed one of these at Harbor Freight, the little accessory pack. They've got these big felt wheels and the shank to put it on. And we're not like to the final finishing part yet, but this is a great time to check and see what we've got. So these felt wheels are, and I don't put anything on it. There's no polish on there at this point, anything like that. I just use it dry. And it's gonna smooth the surface out a little bit, and in that process, it will help you, it'll help expose any tool marks that you've got. So I'll turn it up a little bit for this, and I'm just gonna go over the surface of this. I'm gonna do half of the blank so you can kind of see what it looks like halfway done versus not done. And I'm just gonna kind of go around it. Just like this, and this will actually take any of that Sharpie stuff off of there. The thing is with this, don't leave it in the same spot too long, or it's gonna give you flat spots. So sometimes what I'll actually do is when that's on there, and I can't do this because I've only got one plug-in, but I'll turn the lathe on and let it run with this against it like that. And that'll help me keep from flat spotting any of this here. So I'll do a little bit of that. And I'll come around the edges of it like this too. and it just helps smooth some of that out. So, all right. I almost grabbed a power strip just in case. I got a couple smooth, or a couple flat spots on there, but that's okay. I actually got most of the tool marks out, so I don't know. There's that. If you want to pass that around. I'm going fast, so it's not my cleanest work, but just kind of bear with me on that. All right. Was there a question? Nope. All right. Let's see here. So once I've done that, switch my power here. Here's one is it this one? Light in here makes it actually hard to see some of this stuff. Here's one that I polished a little bit more so you can actually see where I had some tool marks that really got in there. So when I have those, after I've polished it up, I've got a bunch of little jewelry files that I got at Hobby Lobby. So I'll take these and I will go back over, actually like this one the best. Real short, a little bit thicker, and I will go back around just any of those little spots. So when you shine it up, if you get the surface and you don't push too deep, those deep spots are gonna stay dull because you haven't polished them. So when you have those dull spots that aren't polished up, then you're just gonna go back over it with one of these little files like this, or with your longer one, and just clean them up. These are also great for going around the edges too, if there's any spots that just feel a little bit rough. So there's a lot of just kind of stopping and checking as you're going through this process, just to make sure that you're cleaning everything up. Your other spots tend to be like right here on the sides of the drip, along there, and right there, wherever you've rounded it over with your Dremel tool. And so you just have to go in and clean those up a little bit. Have you guys seen the movie Hoosiers? Basketball movie? All right. I went to Muncie Central. I went to the losing school that lost to Milan in that movie, so our colors are purple and white. So that's where the purple and white comes in. So, all right, so we clean those up just like that. And should be good to go. All right. One of the reasons that I do like to use a dummy blank instead of my barrel blank is because, oh, there it is. During the polishing process, I'm going to make a mess, and you don't want to have to clean that up on your barrel, but that's all right. Sometimes what I'll do on the barrel part of it is I'll turn it to size, and I won't finish it completely. That way, when I do, if I want to put my drip blank back over the top of it, I don't have to worry about messing up the finish on it. I can just go back and clean that up later on. So, all right, this gets tricky with only having one plug up here, but like I said, I'm just going to kind of try to show you all my little tricks for finishing and try to keep us right at an hour. All right, so we're back on here, and I'm going to go through my finishing process pretty similar to how I would a regular pen. I do take some blue painter's tape, and this is not necessary, but if you're really thin on your drip, it's going to want to flex as you turn your lathe on, right? Centrifugal force, it wants to just kind of lift it all up. And to avoid that, I just take a piece of blue painter's tape, and keeping in mind that your blank is rotating towards you over the top, so I put my tape on the same way. That way, in case for some reason the edge flaps up, I'm not going to catch it with my tools or on my hand or anything like that. So that's kind of a safety thing, is making sure that you wrap the tape the right way. All right, I think we're good here. We'll turn this back on. Wrong plug. I'm smooth up here, aren't I? I know you're amazed by it. All right, so get my 400 grit here. I never take my tool rest out, but everybody else does, so I guess that's what the cool kids do, so I'll do it too, just to get out of the way. All right, so we're gonna hit this with our amber net. I got 400 here. You can go down onto the drip, all right? If you can get a little bit of it while it's on your machine, that's just that much less hand stuff to have to do. But I'm very light with it, because remember, I've got part of that drip taped up here, and if I go too heavy, I'm gonna create a line right there, so you don't wanna do that. All right, so just getting that a little bit. There's some 400. I have 600 out here someplace too. I normally go, I don't know, I don't always use 600, but I found that on these, scratches, man, it is hard to get out, because you don't have that whole blank to work with. You're just working in a really small area, so just make sure you keep it moving. Just like that. And then I'll go to my micro mesh. The finishing process, it just takes a while on that, on these things. So there's a lot of times where you start doing this, and even with kind of roughing it up first with that felt pad, when you start doing your micro mesh, you're gonna find a tool mark that you missed. So you can clean it up with the files while it's right on here. It's one of those, as soon as you see a mark, you wanna try to sand it out as quick as you can. I like this lathe. This is nice, rounded over the top. Mine's really squared off at the top. So and being left-handed, I normally put my right hand on top of my tool rest and do the micro mesh that way. But I kind of like the lean over the top here. Try not to lean too hard on it. Of course, I'm probably blocking the camera, right? Camera people, I'm sure you guys love me, right? All right. So we'll do that. These are brand new micro mesh pads. I wanted to make sure that I had ones that were clean and were actually gonna do some work, but I use my micro mesh dry. I know a lot of people prefer going with wet sanding here, but it's kind of one of those things, a lot of us like the method that we learned from, and the demonstration that I went to, the guy went with dry sanding on everything, and that's just what I've always done. I'll wet sand stuff, but I don't like to on these. You end up getting just water will get up underneath it, and it's more stuff to deal with later. All right. Who's micro mesh in here? Who's Zona? Who uses both? A little bit, yeah. I'm kind of the same way, and I think all products, they've got their place. I actually brought Zona paper with me because this is one of the things that I tend to use both of them on. So if you don't like to do handwork off the lathe, you're gonna hate this. But if you don't mind it, it's a lot of fun. This is a tricky spot too. I don't need to spend forever on this end here, right? Because I'm not on my final blank and I have that extra little bit there, but I'm just trying to get as much of the surfaces as I can. All right, I think for purposes of this, that's pretty good. So I'll take my tape off here, and I did get a little bit of a line there, but what I'll do next is I will hit those areas while it's still on the lathe, just to give me something really solid to push against. So I don't know why I went with one of my double layered drips to finish up here during this demo, because it's just more surfaces. Do you guys ever turn pens that have a lot of curves and stuff to them? Again, every time you add another curve or a different direction, you've added another sanding surface, and it just takes more time. But you know, there's a lot of people in the Facebook groups that are like, oh, curvy pens, you know, I hate those things, or it's too fat, this or whatever, and I like them. I don't have many examples to show because they tend to sell pretty well. But, you know, we've all got our personal preferences. I love doing them, but man, finishing them just takes forever. All right, so I'd hit every surface here with my micro mesh, just like that. With all the pads, all right? Are you guys all right if I don't go through all of them? Yep, all right. If you're getting bored, they do sell coffee out there if you need a little wake up. This is a plug for the bar staff out there. Okay, I'm gonna take this off of here. And we haven't hit the edges yet, but this is where I'll go back with my micro mesh. If it is rough, I'm going to go with the micro mesh, just to clean that up one more time. You know, that 400 grit sandpaper, it does a good job shaping it, but you're not going to clean the edges up with it. So I'll hit it with this. Now, if it's pretty good, I really prefer at this point to switch over to the Zona paper, because those pads are thick, you know, and there's not a huge amount of flex to them. I don't know if this is not a very popular product at all. Where'd I put those? Have you ever used the micro mesh sheets? Those are really good for this too. The ones that I have here are, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old, I guess 3 years old. I got them at the 2018 show when we were back over on the Ohio side, and you know, I've been using them ever since, but they're just not as sharp, you know, and as gritty as what they once were. And when I do a lot of wet sanding on stuff with by hand, that's what I tend to use. But dry wise, I know again you can use the Zona paper wet, or you can use it dry, wrapping it around my finger, just getting those edges. And again, it's not always about the top edge. You've got the side edges. Side edge, is that a thing? Side edge? I'm a teacher, by the way. That's what I really do. So you can only public educator, so you get what you get, right? That is fun. I teach 4th grade. Good kids. And I talk about pen making a lot. So we're going to also get the back, okay? Just a little bit right there. You don't want to do it too much. If you do it too much, you're going to create a gap underneath your pen. But just enough that we clean it up, because it is slightly undercut from when we did the Dremel. And that's what gives it that kind of raised 3-dimensional drip look. So again, this is a great time where you really want to clean up that tip end of things. This one's really thin here. It's not the thinnest. Did I pass around the one with the label on it? You guys want to pass? Okay. Feel free. Yeah, there we go. That one is super thin. That was when I discovered that I've got to tape it down when I put it back on the lathe to do some of the finish work. That thing just instantly, once the Alumilite got warm, it just started bending up. So I didn't plug where I got these from, did I? These are from Divine Island, from Braxton Frankenberry. They come in, I get the really long rods, they're the kitless. Yeah, I don't do kitless stuff, so I'm, this is about as kitless, I guess, as I go. I've done this on one of Kate's pens. Do you want to grab that one up there? And did I send that one around yet? The one on the far right, I think. Yeah, that's one of, from Bullseye Turning Supply, one of Kate's pen, that's the Apollo, and I did the red drip on that too. So I'm showing you on the Penn State Raw kit, but it's adaptable. I've got a Junior up there as well that I've done this on the cap. I like to do it on pens where both bushings are the same size. That really helps things. However, it doesn't have to be. The steam pump, yeah, every time you sit down, I'm gonna have you pass something else around. I do the same thing at school. It's hilarious. The kids get a big kick out of it. Yeah. The oil slick one there. Third one in, yeah, that one there. That tube, yeah, you can pass that around too. That one is tapered. The bottom bushing is smaller than the top, but if you're gonna do that, when you trim your barrel, just trim it to the small bushing size, all right? And if you've got working calipers, that's where they need to come into play. So on that one, I turned the barrel and then measured it and then found the closest drill bit to whatever that was, so. If you don't have a conversion app on your phone to change your drill bit sizes, to see what the decimals are, whatever, you need to get one because that makes it a lot easier. All right, I'm slowing down here, but I'm going to zona paper this. Again, if you find a tool mark, buff it out. I passed that one around, I think, right? Yep. Okay, so we're going to go back to the lathe. I need my bushing just to hold it in place, and I'll go with a little tape here. So there's two steps to this that really helped to get this clean. Anytime that I can put this on the lathe and turn it on, that's what I'm going to do. It's going to save you a ton of time, and whatever plastic polish you use is going to work. I do like to do Magic Juice on these, but I have been used the Novus polish forever. I don't even know how old these bottles are, man. This lasts me a long time. I'm going to use this today. I would use the Magic Juice. I do think I get slightly shinier with the Magic Juice, being that there's more grits, but I'm just going to use this because I can do it faster. So anytime I can put this back on the lathe and turn the machine on, I'm going to do that. It will save you so much time, but we do have to do some handwork at the end. All right, you're in the splatter zone just in case, but I'll try to keep it.
Showing
I didn't always use the number 3, but it is the heavy scratch remover, so it works. It really helps. There we go. It really helps get the big stuff out before going to the number 2. So I just put a little bit on there, just like that. Now y'all are still wondering about how do we square this up at the end. Sometimes I've already done that at this point. Sometimes I wait a little bit longer. All right, so there's the number 3. Brightens it right up. Same thing if you're using the Magic Juice. They both do a great job on these. If you're happy with your results, you can square the end up now, especially if you're going to use the tape. But if you're using a dummy blank, never square it to the dummy blank. Put it on your barrel blank, square it up, take it off, do the finishing process. All right? So there's that. Now here's where I really found that I started making these look so much better. Because we've got the rest of the drip here that I had underneath the tape. I'll do this as much as I can. I'll even take the tape off. Now I've got dust all over my rag here. I'll take the tape off, and as long as you leave enough material there, that it's going to be all right. Just don't push too hard. Let the rotation do the work, and try not to get it too hot.
Brian, at that point, would you reverse that to get the other side of that drill?
No, because my lathe doesn't do that. So yeah, is there a reverse switch on here?
Get the R.
Who said that? I'll do it. Okay, welcome. Did you lock the doors, by the way, so they couldn't get out? I told them, I said, you know, this takes a lot longer than the hour I said I would need. How are we doing on time anyway? Oh, we're over. But, so I said, just lock the doors and we'll finish when we finish. So, Jason, I don't remember the first time we talked, man, on the phone, it was 2017, I may have told you this earlier. Jason said, don't share all your secrets. It was after I made my first glow punk pen. He said, don't share all your secrets. You know, that's different and that's unique. So I didn't, but here I am today. So this is the only time I've really shared this. And my goal is like for you to leave here thinking like, oh yeah, that's a lot simpler than.
You made it look a lot easier to work with.
I'm not even going to tell you how many of these I've made. I haven't made a bunch of them, to be honest. But every time I've done it, I've gotten faster and it's gotten better. So I think when I first volunteered to do this, I don't know, I maybe made 3 or 4 of them. So that's what you get. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go back to my Dremel. And this is what I really use to clean the rest of it up. They are cloth rotary polishing wheels. Again, Harbor Freight. I think this little pack it's like between $3 and $7 or something like that. They work pretty well. Thought I had a brand new one in here, but that's all right. These have all been used. Okay. I will be nice here. Did my mic go off? Just pull out there. Is this one of the lathes that you're giving away?
No, that's actually mine.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I won't worry about what kind of mess I make.
I'll get it cleaned up. Now, if you want to buy it, I want you to set an offer.
Was it Patterson a couple years ago that was real, didn't want any dust or anything on his lathe. I'm a mess. My shop, I've always kind of had the philosophy I'd rather spend more time turning than cleaning. So I'll do the minimum, but...
Shameless plug, there's this really cool stuff out on one of the tables called Light Pro. It'll fix that lathe bed right up.
Oh, that stuff is that the little pads?
Yeah.
I think Speakeasy might carry those. Is that right? I'm not sure. If you go out there, you'll probably find it someplace.
Maybe not. Yeah. I'll be honest, that stuff does look a lot better than it
It does. I use it on my lathe. If I know that I'm not going to use it for a while, I'll go out there and I'll hit it with some of that stuff. I got some of that a couple years ago, and it lasts me a long time. You don't have to do it all the time. So, all right, spacer bushing. Here we go. And again, I'm going back on the lathe here, and then I'll take it off and do the same thing with this. The little, what were they called, cloth polishing wheels. I will take whatever polish I'm using, whether it's the Magic Juice or the Novus polish, and I will just kind of coat the blank with it. Just a little bit. You could also put this right on the wheel if you want to, but I just want to make sure that there's some of that on all those areas that I need to polish up. All right, we're actually plugged in here. Make sure you're wearing eye protection. It's going to splatter. A lot of times I'll have, just grab my face shield if I'm doing this part. But we're working on the drip here and the edges, because that's the stuff that you're not going to get when you've got the lathe running. So I'll just come here, get a little bit on here just real lightly, and just kind of, again, working in circles and then coming around the edges, just like this. if I'd have known this machine had a reverse on it, I'd have turned it around and worked from the other side being left-handed so that I can turn over here. But just one of the downfalls of being a lefty. You know, you've got enough pressure on here, you can turn it with your mandrel saver. So I'm gonna make sure that I hit every surface, not pressing too hard because again, you don't wanna flat spot it. This is one of those double drips that I did, so we gotta get that part. That's a tricky step. So I did a lot of hand filing on that at home last week, getting the tip. This is where I'm always afraid that I'm gonna have a catch. At this point, if you have a catch, you know, this might break off there, but never happened. So I'll do the 3, I'll do the 2. I don't have any of the 1. You guys are quiet. You're either really amazed or really bored. A little of both? Probably, yeah, I know. It's Sunday, right? All right, we're gonna hit it like that. I'll speed it up here. I'll try to be done in like the next 10 minutes or so. All right, then I will take it off, and just to make sure, that it's all good to go. I'll just do it by hand a little bit. So this lets me really get the edges. I got a couple tool marks on here. I'd probably go in and clean that up, but again, I'm trying to work faster today and just get you through the process. So. All right, that's pretty decent. I need to spend a little bit more time on the double drip, but get the idea there? Cool. All right. Finally, before we assemble, that was a close one. I will throw this on my buffing wheels. Where is, there it is. Do you guys have buffing wheels? I did this for years and years without them, and you know, I would micro mesh the living daylights out of a blank, and then hit it with the polishes. And you know, I love the finish. The finish turns out great, but when you get buffing wheels, it really takes it to a whole new level. All right, so I know this will be tricky for you to see some of this from behind there. I've got a second lathe set up at home, and it has my buffing wheels on it all the time. I've got my buffing wheels on it, and I've got my disc sander. So it's just off to the side. It's kind of weird having the disc sander with the buffing wheels, but my disc sander is stuck and it is not coming off. So it is a permanent addition to my lathe. So, all right, did I pass that double drip one around that I was working on? I can't remember where I put it. Oh, here it is. Again, this is it's a little bit sloppy. I need a little more cleanup work there, but that's the one that we just did there. So, buffing wheel, this is again another great place for your dummy blank, if I remember where I put it. You'd think after doing that like 10 times, I would know what I'm doing, but. All right, so I'll hit it with the buffing wheel. There we go. And again, understanding the rotation of your tools and knowing that this is not glued on there. So I'll start up here on this end. Cleaning it up. I don't have a tool here to square the end of it up. So before I would get through all that finishing stuff, I need to square that up to my barrel blank. All right, I left that out. I forgot since I didn't have my squaring stuff with me today. but just know that when you square it up, you may have to go back and touch up your finishing just based on how much you have to take off of that. I will, sometimes after I square it, finish the end by hand, just on top. I'll lay my micro mesh out on my lathe bed and just little circles like that. Puts a little round edge on there. But again, I'm not like 100% worried about going up to my bushings because I want that kind of cap look that you would see on whatever brand of whiskey bottle is dipped in wax. So trying to get all sides of this. I got to be real careful that I don't get the top edge into my buffing wheels because it is going to yank it down to the ground real fast. If that happens, you never want to fight your tools. You just let them do their thing and buff out, sand out, whatever it is. So I'm going to hit that on all sides. I'm going to take it off, and then I can get these edges. So just, you're not trying to shove this into your wheels. You're just letting the wheels pass by and do all the work. So again, working on this front edge here, top of my drip, getting those edges really good. I find sometimes the hardest edge to make sure that I get cleaned up is the big overhang edge. So we're going to get that real well here too. Again, just being really mindful of the direction of the tools and going in lightly. We've been on the lathe with the spinning like this, so I do like to make sure that I'm going this way with the buffing wheels. So any rings that were in there, I'm getting those buffed out. All right, cool on that? All right. I've got 8 of these to polish, so just bear with me. We'll be here a while. No, I'm just kidding. All right. I generally only use the first 2 wheels. I don't like the third wheel. If I use the third wheel, I'm using it dry. I don't like the Carnauba wax. It seems to give it like a gummy, sticky feel. If I do have any of that on here and I've gone to that third wheel, I tend to go back to the second one with it's the white bar. White diamond, yeah. See how technical I am, the white stuff. All right, let's talk about assembly real quick and then I will wrap it up. So hopefully I haven't left out any steps. Can I have that finished tube? Yeah. Thank you, sir. So, look at that, we're squared up. Oh, that's awesome. All right, so for assembly, if you've got the stripe on there, it's kind of decision time. Do you want it to line up with the drip? Do you want it over to the side, back behind, whatever? But always make sure you've checked it before you get any glue or anything on there. So I don't know. I like it like that. My wife disagrees. She said it should be off the side like that. So we always have to do it her way. Just it makes things better. All right. Wax paper. You're just gonna tear a little square off, and I just kind of start by slipping it underneath where the drip is, just like that. Okay, I'll hold that in place or put a piece of tape on it. You want to do that to protect your finish, and I learned this the hard way. So on that raw kit that I did that has the label on it, I didn't cover it. I was like, oh, this is fine. I don't need to cover this stuff up. I'm just going to slide this blank right over the top of it. No, I got CA all over it, and of course, it was glued on at that point, right? So next came getting those little files out, filing it down, and then hand buffing it again. It was an awful experience. So, all right, you want to keep this thin. I'm kind of, I just threw this on here, but 1 layer, a little bit of tape. You're just trying to protect the wood, right? If you can keep the tape out from underneath the drip, that's kind of ideal. But all right, CA, I use it all. Mercury, I've got the Flex. I don't think I have any regular with me. I glue my tubes with Stick Fast because it is cheaper, you get more per ounce. I don't like to use it as a finish anymore. Have you ever had that crackle effect that people talk about? Yeah, you won't have it for a long time, and next thing you know, you've got a pen that's got that shattered glass. So I do go with the Mercury. And for this part, instead of putting glue on the tube, if you put the glue on the tube, when you shove this on, you're gonna take all that glue, squish it down, right? So we're gonna put it on the inside of the blank. And it doesn't take a lot. I'm just doing a little bit, kind of a little bit of ring. It's a little tricky with where the drip is, so I'll probably just put a little dot there. And then I'm gonna do just a thin line down the drip. Again, it doesn't take a lot. You know that a little bit goes a long way. That's gonna hold it secure. I will put a little bit, like the smallest little bit up here on that 3/8 inch hole where that's gonna touch the tube.
Is this the medium?
Yep, I use the medium. Anytime I'm gluing to a tube or anything like that, I'm gonna go with medium. All right, so the wax paper is there just basically to protect stuff. And then we just get this on here real quick. Don't stop. I've never had one get stuck, you know, we get tube halfway in, but just put it on there real quick, and you do not want to twist. So right there, and boom, we're on. Get your wax paper out, pull it straight down, give your drip a little squeeze, and you should be good to go. Other than kind of completely skipping over the step where I square the end up, that's pretty much it. You assemble it like regular and you're good to go. Cool?
Very nice.
Any questions? All right, if you want to see this, it's up here. If you want to see some of the pens I've done this on, check them out up there. So, thank you guys for coming, I appreciate it. And that's all I got.